Today we're talking about something that's extremely important to COM objects and COM servers, and that's the registry. And the registry is a hierarchical system that actually represents information about pretty much everything on the computer. In fact, it replaced the old .ini files that had configuration information for applications and things like that. And the original Windows 3.1 version, the sole purpose of the registry actually was to maintain information for COM objects. But as I say, it sort of evolved to maintaining information for pretty much everything on the computer. In fact, every time you do an install, I can pretty much guarantee that whatever program you're installing is going to do a ton of updates to the registry. And there are 5 basic root keys to the registry, and I've heard these referred to as hives, but in fact hives are actually the discrete files that make up the physical registry. And I suspect all of these 5 root keys are represented by separate hives, which is how they come to be called hives all the time, but that's just a theory on my part. And the 5 root keys are HKey local machine, which is generally abbreviated HKLM, HKey current config, which is abbreviated HKCC, HKey classes root, which is abbreviated HKCR, HKey current user, which is abbreviated HKCU, and HKey users, which is abbreviated HKU. And you generally represent the hierarchy in the registry the same way you represent the hierarchy in the file system. For instance, here's a representation, and it's basically the HKey local machine root key, a software subkey, a Microsoft subkey of that, a Windows subkey of that, a current version subkey of that, a policy subkey of that, and a system subkey of that. And I actually had to access this key recently when I had a problem with my LAN not working. It worked on all the machines except one, the one you're actually looking at now, and this didn't solve the problem. But it gave me a good example of interacting with the registry. And in order to actually make the registry visible, we have a utility called Regedit. And normally you'll invoke Regedit by going down to the Start button and typing Regedit into the search programs. But I don't like to do that because I'm a command prompt guy from the word one. So if we bring up a command prompt or a DOS box and type in Regedit, see, at first there's a message box that says, do you want to trust Microsoft? And I really don't, but I will anyhow. And then that brings up a visualization of the registry in the registry editor, and you see here are the 5 root keys. And to go through the example we were talking about, it would be HKey local machine software, so I click on that and then click on that, and then the next subkey is Microsoft, so click on Microsoft. The next subkey is Windows, you can see how many subkeys there are. I click on Windows, and the next subkey is current version, and the next subkey is policies. And the final subkey is system. So if we click on the system, we see a whole series of what would normally be called key values. But when they went from the 16-bit registry in Windows 3.1 to the 32-bit registry, it created a problem because they called all the things we've been looking at keys, and then they only had one value within a key like this. There'd only be one value here, which would be a string, and then that would be the value. But when we switched to 32-bit, they decided we should be able to have multiple parameters within a given key. So we now have something that is like a key and something else that is like a value, and instead of just being strings, there's a number of different value types like dword and string and so on. And so the new naming convention is they call this a value name, and then they call this value data. So what we wanted to do was add a new value based on this white paper I read. Gotta move things around so I can see things. So the way to do this is to right click on the key we want to add it to and click new, and then select the data type, and in this case it's going to be dword, and that creates an initial value name of new value #1, and I want to change that to enable linked connections. And then click away so that actually exists. And then we want to change the value data in this to be a 1. Right now it's the default of 0. So I click on it and right click on it and click modify, and the value data box pops up, and I make this a 1 and say OK, and now this is a 1, and allegedly this would fix my LAN problem, but it didn't. They actually said in the white paper that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So we don't want to just leave this in here because changing the registry can screw up your whole system. So what we want to do is right click on this and click delete, and it says deleting certain registry values could cause system instability. Are you sure we want to permanently delete this value? And nervously we click yes. So I think the very last thing I wanted to talk about was there's a type of file called a .reg file, .reg extension, and that's a human readable file that contains any number of these registry keys and value names and value data, and it can be used for importing and exporting portions of the registry. But this really isn't a course on registry. I really want to talk about the registry as it relates to COM, so I'll leave it to you to research how these reg files are used. They're sort of like the batch files of the registry. Well, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and learned a lot, and I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe.